Good afternoon, all, and welcome to another edition of the Sal Greco Show. And I'm your host, Sal Greco. It has been a riveting morning, to say the least, right now, with the amount of news I have in front of me right now that I'm going to divulge to you all. Thank you for tuning in. If you can, please hit that like, share, subscribe button. Hit that notification button as well. If you're watching on Rumble, that's if you're on YouTube. If you're on Rumble, please hit that like, hit that Rumble button. And if you're watching us right now live on X, please repost this and share it out with all your friends, especially some that are low information in your circle, because this is the place they could come to get informed real quick on the issues, but with some fact-based evidence on fact-based analysis off of that as well. So first off, there is a lot going on right now. Obviously, I'm going to have Sarena Townsend come on in a couple of minutes here. But while she was going to come on, there was an entire new scandal just revealed in the last few hours. And I'm going to read you the article off the Post so I could keep this up on the screen. But last night, Eric Sanders, as you know, he's been on my show. He's also my attorney. He broke this on X late last night. So the Post is basically, I don't know, I'm going to read this, and it's almost like two different things are going on right now. But that's Eric Sanders actually broke this last night, and that was the Post. I don't know if you want to scroll down that. But I'm going to read the article and then go to some other revelations Eric Sanders had on top of it with this. So, and mind you, folks, this is all police officers. They're in distress, and they call, and they don't know who to turn to. So there's a lot with this whole story. So that's the headline in the Post. Dozens of troubled NYPD cops finally forced to resign after faulty hiring standards. And this was written by Amanda Woods, Joe Marino, Tina Moore, and Larry Salona. Dozens of NYPD cops who failed to meet the department standards, including for mental health, are now being forced to resign, or else they'll be fired from the force, law enforcement sources revealed Thursday. A total of 30 cops hired between 2023 and 2024 under Inspector Terrell Anderson, who has since been transferred out of this role with the police academy, are being notified of the purge Thursday, according to the sources. They all got called down, a police source told the Post. They're being told, you didn't meet the qualifications. You shouldn't have been hired. You have 24 hours to resign or be fired. That is not legal in my eyes, but whatever. A lot of them are psych issues, the sources. There are other issues, too. The NYPD confirmed the move in a statement issued to the Post. Following an internal investigation, the NYPD recently identified officers who joined the department in the past 2 years despite receiving final notices of disqualification during the application process, which is a violation of the law, a department spokesperson said. The department was not legally allowed to hire these individuals and was forced to inform them that they could no longer continue as members of the NYPD. During their application process, the recruits were issued notices of disqualification, which prohibits the NYPD from hiring them as a matter of state law, the sources said. Some of the recruits in questions allegedly lied about their previous convictions, multiple arrests, and previous employment terminations, according to the sources. The officers' guns were removed over the past few days, the source said. Patrick Hendry, president of the Police Benevolent Association, is seeking a temporary restraining order to stop the cops' removal from the department. These police officers aren't responsible for the NYPD's broken hiring process, Hendry said. As far as they know, they were qualified to be New York City police officers because the NYPD hired and trained them. It is an absolute travesty that the department is trying to cover its tracks by summarily forcing them off the job without affording them the same appeal process available to other applicants, the union head said. We are exploring all legal options to protect our members' rights and hold the NYPD accountable for this complete management failure. Meanwhile, Anderson, who led the NYPD's candidate assessment division, was transferred to the housing unit back on May 12th as part of an Internal Affairs Bureau probe into claims he allowed more than 70 candidates to stay at the academy, even though they had failed the psych requirements. Anderson is now facing serious departmental charges, according to the source. Among the troubled recruits allegedly kept on by Anderson was Emilio Andino, the nephew of ex-NYPD Lieutenant Quatisha Epps, the former department bigwig implicated in a tawdry sex for OT scandal, the sources said. and Dino, who was on probation, was previously fired after getting into a fight at the academy, according to the sources. So that is that article, and there's more now coming from Eric Sanders, who's been on I don't know. He's been like unloading on them, right? So here it is. This is one of the latest things that he had said here. What the NYPD did has opened Pandora's box, and I have no idea what's coming. I've been inundated with calls about the NYPD candidate assessment division's corrupt hiring practices stretching back to the late 1980s. We're talking about years of buried files, selectively enforced disqualifications, unqualified hires with disqualifying histories, and a blatant double standard that favors insiders and cronies over qualified applicants. I now have names, and many of those names lead straight to the NYPD executive staff, the same one who signed off on psychological. Let's keep pulling that down. All right, psychological disqualifications for trauma survivors while quietly ushering in candidates with known drug use, sealed records, sealed arrests, and worse. So let's stop pretending this is about fitness. This is about power, politics, and protecting the NYPD's internal caste system. If the department thought it could scapegoat a few probationary officers and keep the rest under wraps, they miscalculated. This isn't about defending the 37 PPOs. This is about dismantling a rigged system that has harmed generations of qualified candidates, particularly women, survivors, and people of color, while shielding the connected and the compromised. This time, we're not walking away. We're bringing the whole thing down, one affidavit, one deposition, one executive at a time. This is quite the bombshell you're hearing right there, folks. And he even said more here because they particularly attacked. They were attacking his client. The PBA chimed in. So it was more. I'm now hearing that the PBA has allegedly filed a preliminary injunction in court related to the sweeping and deeply troubling action against newly hired probationary police officers. If true, it's necessary first step. But let's be clear, regardless of the outcome of that filing, every affected officer still has an individual cause of action against the NYPD and its leadership. Each member has a right to challenge what is plainly an unlawful and retaliatory misuse of psychological screening. Then so-called assessments are based on circular reasoning and wholly subjective conclusions, more about what an unqualified psychologist thinks of you than any objective job-related forensic criteria. These evaluations violate not only the uniform guidelines on employee selection procedures, but also basic principles of due process, equal protection, and anti-discrimination law. Commissioner Jessica S. Tisch, best known as the soccer mom around here, hailed in some circles as the NYPD savior, has presided over and enabled the discriminatory framework. Under her leadership, trauma survivors have been re-traumatized. Women have been interrogated about their private sexual histories, and otherwise qualified candidates have been pushed out based on stigma, not science. No injunction can fully undo the damage already done, but rest assured, the administration and every official who took part in the systematic abuse will be held accountable, whether in federal court, before state agencies, or in the court of public opinion. This fight is just beginning. He's right about a lot there. And I mean, he's gone on and on. This is another one here. He said, and to every probationary police officer being dragged into this mess, remember this: PBA lawyers are not your personal attorneys. They represent the union, not you individually. Their interests may not align with yours, especially when the goal becomes damage control instead of justice. You have a legal right to consult with independent counsel if you're choosing someone who will advocate for you, not the institution. Do not let anyone press you into silence, resignation, or signing anything without fully understanding your rights and the consequences. This is not the time for blind trust. It's the time to protect your future. If the system can flip on you this fast, you need someone in your corner who's not answering to the same people trying to make you disappear. That is 100% correct. I really advise everybody here, if you're a police officer and this has happened to you, and I'm talking about if you're beating one of these people or they're targeting you, I've been there. The PBA does not have your best interests, okay? They don't. You really need to contact outside counsel, independent. I know it might cost money, but trust me, in the long run, you'll thank me for it, because you cannot trust the PBA was silent on all of this, by the way, and it's just and there's more. One more thing that Eric said here, and let's be clear: don't be misled by the New York Post headline. It's a red herring, just like the NYPD's flimsy case against these probationary police officers. Sensationalism is the department's favorite distraction tactic. When the facts don't support their actions, they pivot to character assassination, media manipulation, and vague insinuations. Isn't the finest unfiltered? Clearly, haven't you seen this unfold in front of your eyes with all of us, with the police department, with me, with John, with Eric, with Marlon? They did it with my client, Emilio Andino, and they're doing it again now. The NYPD would rather spin a headline that explain why it's relying on unlicensed psychologists, subjective trauma shaming evaluations, and legally indefensible reasoning to purge its own probationary police officers. That's not public safety, it's public deception. So if you're reading the tabloids, read between the lines. The louder the smear, the weaker their case. And I would know that because they called me a right-wing extremist, all kinds of stuff. And then they tell you, yeah, by the way, Sal never did anything wrong or illegal or criminal. We just don't like that he's friends with someone. So I could personally attest to this. So there was a lot there. I wanted to put that out because that's breaking news. And again, this has been a system. They're trying to get rid of Inspector Anderson, make him the scapegoat, when clearly it's a systematic issue. Jessica Tisch, the soccer mom, I keep telling everyone, they're all praising her. I know Mamdani, they told Mamdani, if you're mayor, you need to keep her as the police commissioner. I don't know who and what's going on behind the scenes with that. Right there, Mamdani urged to keep Tisch as police commissioner is considering it. So I don't know. Her family are big-time power brokers in politics, man, because she has been pushed everywhere, all over you, everywhere, writing her own articles, puff pieces, yet corruption flourishes underneath her, and cover-ups. She is a soccer mom, like I like to say. To my eyes, soccer mom Jessica Tisch. She has no idea about the culture of the police department. She just wants to smile in front of the camera so that she could someday be mayor. I guess that's the strategy I see, because this is a mess. In 1 week, she gets hit with this, and also there's lawsuits that were filed by chiefs. So without any further ado, let me bring on Sarena Townsend.
Hey, Sal. You got me on the run today. I'm in my car.
I know. Well, thanks for being on. I know you were in court, but before we get into the Chiefs thing, what is your take on what I just read? This whole thing with how they're basically trying to, I don't even know if it's legal. I know the police commissioner could terminate who they want, but this sounds absolutely in violation of people's due process and how the NYPD is even going about this.
Yeah, the fact that they're probationary hurts them a little bit because their rights are different from those who are, full members. But that being said, this should definitely be a consult with, as you said, a paid attorney. I would not rely on the union's attorneys. And I would definitely, if you're one of those, I think it's 37 officers who were basically just terminated. I can't believe it. They must be horrified at the treatment by the police department that they are trying to get into. For all they know, they were absolutely qualified for the position. They were hired. They're already, involved in learning and training for the job. They haven't done anything, right, Sal? Like they're not under investigation for any misconduct whatsoever. They just exist. And now all of a sudden they don't have a job anymore. Absolutely, you must consult paid counsel, somebody who's not connected with the department or the union, and make sure that you go through all of your options with that attorney, because you could have a claim.
I think this is not only a claim, it's in total violation of their rights, because, you had no problem hiring them and they're not in trouble for anything. Because remember, these are not people just in the academy. They're working. They're in uniform. They're in precincts. So they haven't done anything wrong. There's nothing wrong. Yet you're now saying we got to pull you back and you got to get fired for what exactly? oh, we messed up hiring you? How does that, and why? And another thing too is they're trying to make this Anderson guy the scapegoat for a lot of things. And I understand that candidate assessment thing, it's a panel. It's been a panel for years that determine who stays and who goes. So it's not Anderson that makes the final decision. There's a panel of people, the people in his office, the CO, the XO. So they're not telling you the full truth. And that's the other issue here. Shout out to Frankie Pagliucci, who says, yes, paid attorneys will have you back. He sends $9.99. I'll make sure, Frankie, I get a couple of extra espressos today. Thanks for the donation. But I mean, this is just unbelievable, Sarena. So with that,
it is. Wait, I want to say one more thing with that, because you're right. Like I was floored by what I read with this, and I'm glad you're covering it. The other thing I would say is, since you've already mentioned they're on the job already, there's a couple of things that follow from that, right? So now what? Now all the people that they collared or all the people that they interacted with are going to have lawsuits against PD saying you allowed a mentally ill person to collar me. I mean, right? You're opening yourself up to that liability. And then the other thing, Sal, is if the claim is simply you have mental health issues, like you failed the mental health exam, but we had you working, what did they do on the job that kind of corroborates that they have mental health issues? Because if you can't point to anything, if they've been working satisfactorily on the job, right? They've been doing a good job. None of these things have affected their ability to do the job. Do you really have, the right evidence and standing to say that in fact you would be a liability to the department? I would argue if they've been doing a good job this whole time, how can you say that they can't do a good job? I don't know. I don't think it's good. I think it's bad.
I am in total agreement with you, because I didn't even think about any arrests that they made, because that can now boomerang on all of the entire police department. He's just saying a mentally unwell person that you said you had no problem with, but now all of a sudden they do. Now you have a problem with them, so that means that all their arrests are what? There's a conflict there, which means now the city. Eric Adams has a new scandal every 5 minutes. I don't know how people keep saying Eric Adams everyone needs to resign. So Eric Adams is a criminal. And it's a shame that Donald Trump, the president of the United States, stuck his nose in his business, because even last night, I showed, me and Marlon had a show once, and I covered this Uzbekistan federal agent guy, or whatever, he works for the government there, was a very close and chummy friend of Eric Adams. And of course, what was he doing? Straw donations. It was reported here on the Sal Greco Show. These months later now, the New York City Campaign Finance Board right there, they're getting the matching funds. He's not going to get any matching funds because they're investigating him right there. Now looking into donations connected to an alleged Uzbekistan agent, and continues to reject the mayor's appeals for matching funds. That is another indictment, Sarena. So the fact that Donald Trump's DOJ, Emo Bove, even got involved in that shows you, I mean, there is a quid pro quo. In fact, Trump said it himself. He said something to the degree of he stepped in. I did him I helped him out. You helped him out?
Yeah.
You helped him out? Geez, he's not helping out a doctor right now in Colorado that's facing 20 or 30 years in jail, because when the whole mandate was going on, this doctor was letting you come to his office, and instead of injecting you with the shot, he would inject apples, oranges, and just destroy the vials. But they charged him with some federal crime. So looks like they forgot about that human being over there. Hey, look, this is another thing with this guy. A watchdog group launched a records lawsuit Thursday to obtain communications involving Emo Bove, a senior Justice Department's leader, of the center of a recent whistleblower complaint. This guy is just loaded, and he's trying to be a judge, and the hearing was ridiculous, by the way. But
it's scary.
I don't mean to go too far off, but I read this and what you're about to tell us with your suit, and it's I'm just flabbergasted by what I'm seeing, because we couldn't even get you on without another scandal that's underneath Eric Adams, and it just the scandals are adding up, Sarena. It's like a pile of them.
I know the evidence is there. The indictments are there. I mean, all of these things that you're pointing to as well are indictments on him, as you say. Like, we won't give him matching money. Why? Say the rest of the sentence. What? Like, finish the thought, guys. Right? Why? Because we know he's going to misuse it. We know that's a problem. And honestly, if New Yorkers vote for Mayor Adams, you are giving tacit approval of the quid pro quo, in my opinion. That's what you're doing.
I could say all you want about Mamdani. Mamdani has his own negatives. I'm sure he did a lot of stuff, but is he going to be worse than this guy as far as corruption wise? None of the other candidates are corrupt like Eric Adams. That's a fact. Right. I mean, Cuomo is, but Curtis won't be. Jim Walden was a prosecutor, so yeah. I would 100% put my money down on everyone else other than Cuomo and say they are far better and far more qualified than Eric Adams, who's a stone cold criminal running around, and everything he does and everything underneath him just collapses. It collapses all the time. Rob Lukash said, he's the co-host of the Executive Perspectives. Imagine if they left another profession or job. Shows you they don't care about the mental health, such BS. And this is a huge problem, folks. And if you're one of these officers, I would recommend calling Sarena right now and trying to because if you have to understand this case, they are violating your rights. And I would not sign any paperwork. I don't care which PBA union, whatever they tell you. Listen, they were telling me things when I was going through my thing. They don't have your best interest. They protect the institution. Remember, Pat Hendry is also an alumni of where? Our favorite restaurant, Con Sofrito. These guys can care less about you. They're just up there. They want to see themselves on camera. They're all self-impressed people. So if you are one of these people or you're about to be, I'm sure they're trying to get more of them, contact an attorney. Don't worry about how much it's worth. Is it worth your life and your career? Because when they fire you and they tell you all these things and you sign away your life, you'll have no repercussions of how to go about it in the future. And also you'll be stuck with your life and your career. You'll be labeled whatever they say because they love doing that. They love doing the best recourse is to punch them in the face. And I mean, publicly in court, I don't mean, but they don't like that kind of fight. And Jessica Tisch is a monster and a soccer mom, and she's a disgrace. Her NYPD is a disaster underneath her. All the fake crime numbers they have. July 4th, what did she say, Sarena? Oh, there's nothing going to happen. I could tell you this, Sarena. I've worked July 4th so many times, and I could tell you there is not one July 4th something big or criminal is not going on. The radio, if you listen, it was nonstop. This is going on. Shots fired here. This is going on. There's a gang. There's an unruly gang of people going down the street. They're lighting fireworks. They beat up people. It was like nonstop. It would be so much, Sarena, that those calls started probably late July 3rd into that evening, into the morning of July 4th, all the way till July 5th. Yet she says there was no crime. I mean, and only low information people believe that BS. You're a cop. You're like, what? What?
Yeah, I mean, nobody buys it. And it's really, it's silly, frankly, to make those kinds of statements so quickly after the 4th. You obviously hadn't done your due diligence before making a public statement like that, which is a big statement to make. You wanted it to be a big spectacle. You wanted it to be a big statement. You better have vetted that statement before making it publicly. And she didn't. And now you got egg on your face. Like, that's just embarrassing. And it erodes the trust that anybody may still have in the NYPD.
It is. And I can tell you, I mean, I'm not an executive, but I could tell you that radio, I've been there. It doesn't stop. So to say there's no crime, we haven't done July 4th is a record. You're being disingenuous. And that's her problem. Yeah. There's your problem. Oh, so Rob Lukash said there is a reason they are PBA lawyers. They get a real lawyer like Sarena. You wouldn't be sorry. And
thanks, Rob.
So Marlon's,
you won't be sorry.
Marlon's asking, has Sarena gotten calls from these cops too? Like, have you gotten any calls for the cops, these cops involved in this for representation?
Not yet. I think it was very, very recent. And sometimes people need a moment to let this thing sink in and realize that maybe they may not even realize until now that they have a potential case, that they have rights that were trampled on. So, and I don't solicit, we don't solicit as lawyers. So I am here if anybody wants, but I can't reach out to you. You got to reach out to me.
Yeah. I highly recommend many of you call Sarena right there. It says Townsend Law NYC.com if you want to go on a website. I'm telling you, I would definitely, you have to have a lawyer. Do not trust the PBA. They will sell you down the river. They're only looking for their own best interest. I am telling you, please, if you're one of these officers, I'm really fired up with it. If you're one of these officers and they're doing this to you, you have to call a lawyer. Do not trust the PBA. I'm telling you, they're the same ones that were telling me, oh, you're guilty of something. You have to take the 60-day hit. Meanwhile, I was not guilty of anything and committed no crimes. These are the kind of people you're dealing with.
That's so upsetting. So.
And they also hang out with people like mob associates and self-admitted criminal, and then people get stabbed in their place and don't ask any questions. But that's what the PBA, the head of the PBA, that's who they're hanging around.
Oh my God. Sal, we should have known each other when, had you called me, we could have had a good time fighting your case.
There's so many different, there's so many angles though, Sarena. It's like, there's not one thing. It's like 20 different ways of hitting it. So, and now I wanted to get into, this was the big headline. This was the big splash until now, a day later, there's another splash in the NYPD. But you have 4 chiefs. You're representing 4 chiefs that recently, we understand why they had to step down because the administration is corrupt and didn't like them. I know that for a fact, but you're representing 4 chiefs in 4 separate cases that you filed in New York State Court, which is, I'm going to tell people, that's a big thing because by filing in federal court, the DOI, the FBI, they could see that, DOJ. But I am telling all of you, the reason that she's filing these cases now is because the DOJ paused all criminal investigations involving one Eric Adams. Why? Because there's a quid pro quo. Ask Emo Bove this. I don't know. Is Trump getting a casino up in the Bronx? You really have to start to look at these things. And I don't want to kill Trump because, I voted for him 3 times. I'll vote for him again. But that doesn't mean that everything this guy does and says is the word of the Lord. With how some are reacting. Yeah. So this whole lawsuit is really the beginning part of it is the reason she had to do this is because of the inaction from the DOJ, thanks to Trump, by getting rid of Eric's case, which now you see there's other parts to it as well with the Uzbeki guy and all these other things. And that's why they had to file it. So, and I want this said before you start with this, with anything. I know that one of them, Chief Essig, his son was arrested. I know all of these things that all these people. I'm not saying we have 4 choir boys, and I know these people have personal beefs with these people. Let your feelings stay subsided. No feelings here. You got to listen to the facts and the merits of this case because there's a lot of merit to them. So, Sarena, I don't know if you want to take it away one by one with each plaintiff.
Yeah, no problem. So, and I'll address that too, by the way, before I start, because you're right. Let's set the tone. I myself, as people may know, I wear the proud badge of being the first person that Mayor Adams fired in his administration.
That's correct.
Okay?
That is,
right? I was, and I sounded the bell about former Commissioner Luis Molina. I sounded the bell about what he asked me to do, that is dismiss thousands of disciplinary cases. And when I refused to do it, he fired me. And I rang that bell right away. And the feedback that I got at first, because this is a new administration and it's day one, was she's sour grapes. She's just a disgruntled, fired employee. Mm-hmm. But it turned out everything that I ever said was true. Everything that I said was corroborated. There's evidence, there's witnesses, there's all of that, okay? And everything that has happened, all the stuff that you're seeing is stuff that I was trying to explain on literal day 1 of Adams's administration. Okay, so just because somebody, gets asked to step down or steps down or leaves. And just because there is an ability to say like, oh, they're pissed off. Yeah, I'm pissed off, but I'm also right. So my 4 clients, you can say they're upset. You can say that, one time you heard they did something bad in their 40 years of practice, or their 40 years on the job. But everybody's got a story about people, especially people in the limelight, especially people who have risen up to those levels. You're always going to make some enemies on the way. If you're a people pleaser to everybody, you probably got nothing done. So I get it. I get that there's going to be people climbing out of the woodwork here and say like, oh, one time this happened, or they have other family on the job or whatever. Okay. There is a difference. And here is the biggest difference. And I'm going to get to the lawsuits. But the biggest difference is this. It's one thing to have a family member on the job. It's one thing to have somebody who get a job if they are qualified. We hear about Nepo babies in Hollywood all the time, by the way, but a lot of those Nepo babies deserve it. They're really good actors or actresses. It's understandable that people are like, okay, these people also might have gotten jobs through connections. But the lawsuits that we have here and the complaints that were happening here are that the people who got those jobs were completely unqualified for those jobs. I'm not talking subjective. I'm talking literally, there are specific standards that must be met, thresholds that must be crossed to get certain high-level positions in certain bureaus for a reason. I think everybody would agree, for a reason. And that didn't exist here. And we look back and we wonder why it was happening. And you're seeing this pattern. It's all coming from the friends and family filter. So that's not the only thing that we're suing about, but that is something that's underlying, at least 2 of these lawsuits. So Sal, you could interrupt me and then I'll go into the specifics.
I know. Well, first I want to say here, Patrick Donahue chimed in and said, Sarena, take a look into the approved discretionary promotion list that were given to the mayor by a certain union president. This practice took place before Police Commissioner Tisch created a program to review senior MOS who were eligible for discretionary promotions but were passed over under a recent administration. Very interesting. Very interesting. So there you have it, Pat. Thanks for that one. That's a little nugget that is
it is
out there. So I guess I'm going to start with the first person, and that would be James Essig, with Chief Essig. Full disclosure, I worked with his nephew at one point. He's a good kid. I worked with him in CTTF. But again, I'm not going to discuss his son, his what happened, or what. I'm just discussing his case right now, because his allegations that were in there was that he was put aside and that there's 15,000. So not too long ago on this very show, on my X feed, on John Macari's X feed, on Eric Dim's X feed, on the Finest Unfiltered, Marlon Bethel all started telling you that allegedly the Hispanic Society, which is clearly, or many of these fraternities, not just the Hispanic Society, but they were involved in pay-for-play promotion scandals on top of the nightclub extortion racket, which is where this consofrito plays into it, because the allegations and the rumor is that there were cops that were paying for promotions, whether it be to get to detective, special assignment pay, and some of that also occurred at Consofrito, where they would drop off envelopes. That's just one thing I'm telling you about. There's many others, but Essig made this claim that $15,000 a pop is what Eddie Caban was taking. So I don't know if you could get into the whole everything there, but that is like unbelievable that now there's somebody on the record stating this. And I know of 2 people that were trying to come forward, but again, the FBI and all the DOJ paused those investigations.
Yeah. And so you're right, Sal. I'm not going to get into like the specific details simply because the litigation is pending, but it is true that it is an alarming thing. If it was happening, we know that the feds were investigating it. We know, I think we can safely say, Sal, you may know more than me, that it's no longer an open or active investigation. I'm not sure, frankly, if the feds are still investigating it or not. But what we were seeing is people coming in through Mayor Adams's circle into very high level positions, into positions like in SVU. And my client, Essig was like, SVU, and we all know this, by the way. I've testified about, special victims and PREA cases within the jails, sexual assault, sexual harassment within the jails, at city council hearings and things like that. Like, you're always asked about that bureau for good reason. I mean, these are, victims and survivors of the most horrific crime. These are the types of cases that must be handled delicately. These are the types of detectives that we want to be very specifically trained in how to interview victims of sexual assault. And if you don't have the right background, the right temperament, you're going to screw up cases that really do need to be solved and have rock solid evidence. So, Essig is raising the red flags like, hey, we're getting people into these kinds of bureaus, including special victims, who are not qualified to be there. And basically the running theme of all of these lawsuits is, you're not playing ball. We don't want to hear the complaints. We just want you to abide. We just want you to bend the knee and play ball. And we don't want to hear it anymore. But the problem is when you whistleblow like that, when you say, you're violating policy, you're doing something that's in violation of policy, you're doing something that's not allowed, and then you get terminated for it or constructively terminated for it or demoted or asked to leave or any other negative job action in retaliation for whistleblowing, that's a problem. That is an actionable lawsuit. And so, yeah, this is stuff that I'm sure your viewers are like, this tracks. I mean, you've seen it. If you're in the department, especially, you've seen the people getting positions who don't deserve to get them.
I definitely could say that. Now, so Essig, I would say, did try to complain to someone, because I guess that's what, because obviously they're all whistleblowers. They're getting destroyed. Because if he's whistleblowing, would that have been to Miguel Iglesias, who is the same guy that the commissioner told to step down because he's involved in a bunch of scandals and cover-ups with Wendy Garcia, and then he's also part of the Consofrito crew, which again shows me that Essig or McCormick, who are you going to complain when they literally, you know what I mean? They're complaining to someone who's part of that structure with Madry and all of those guys, all the people that they're mentioning, Shell, Madry, Caban, Eric Adams, Kaz Daughtry. They're all in that circle, and he's one of the gatekeepers, Iglesias, who took over, I believe, for Veneciano.
Well, yeah, here's the thing, and I could say it personally too, as I was a whistleblower about the cases that Molina wanted me to bury under the rug. Who was I supposed to go to? Like, the people that he put in place, the people that are my boss and the bosses of these chiefs. You don't have many bosses above you. When I was a deputy commissioner, who did I have above me? Hardly anyone. Who was I supposed to complain to? The guy who asked me to do the thing? Like, who was it? So I complained, I did. I complained to our legal counsel. I complained to the federal monitor. And then I bitched about it to, colleagues. But like, what are you supposed to do in a situation like that? It's very difficult because you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. You basically have to make the decision that either you're going to give up your job, right? You're going to be outspoken about it, which is what I did too. You're going to say something, and basically you're handing in your resignation at that point because you're never going to make it after that. Or you have to swallow it and keep going. But if you do that, you're just as bad as they are. You're committing maybe even crimes, but even if not crimes, you're committing, acts against policy. And if you're not willing to do that, if you're willing to, if you're a straight up person, if you're an ethical person and you're not willing to do it, you're really caught between a rock and a hard place. It's very, very difficult to know what to do and who to complain to. And again, these guys are all people who are decorated, high level people, and you don't know where to go at that point. Yeah. You really don't know where to go.
Yeah, so Pat Downey once again chimed in, said detective squads are grossly understaffed, yet SVU seems to get a staffing boost a few times a year with MOS who have no investigative experience.
Yeah.
Time in the squad warrants to then go to special victims. He's got a point.
Sal, he's so right. Listen, I'm also a criminal defense attorney. The last trial I did was a special victims trial, and you should have seen the cross-examination I had of the SVU detective. The judge even pulled me aside after the case and was like, I didn't even know what to do at that point. Like, you just destroyed him. And I'm like, yeah, but it was easy. It shouldn't be easy. And I won that trial. And these are cases where you need to have the right people on the case. It is going to fall apart, and you're going to let real victims down if you don't have the right people in those units. And that, is also a segue to the McCormick lawsuit, because, yes. Right, McCormick was in charge of all the task forces that liaise with the feds. And he was seeing an unbelievable influx also of unqualified people, to the point where the feds themselves were saying, who are these people? Like, we can't work with these people. And then we have the famous, it's going to become famous if it's not already, story in the complaint that we wrote, which is, when interviewing one of these referrals as to why they wanted to be in the El Dorado unit. And the El Dorado unit, for those who don't know, they deal with, with money crimes, money laundering, and all of that. And, in order to be in that unit, you need some sort of financial background, accounting background, something that says, what you're doing when you're evaluating these cases. Those cases are tough, the paper cases. It doesn't make sense to people like me, right? So, you need that kind of background. And this referral comes in, right, from one of the cronies. And the interview is happening. Well, why do you want to be a part of this unit? Because the guy had no background whatsoever. And I think he even had a criminal case in his history, which means he can't testify at trial, right, without getting killed on cross. Why was he interested in the El Dorado unit? Because it sounded cool. And he got the job. Apparently, he's still there. So this is what we're doing. And you're just like torpedoing your own cases when you put people in there like this.
That is incredible. So because he's whistleblowing on the fact of, hey, listen, Tim Pearson and Banks, who keep sending me these people that are clearly cronies or tied to nepotism and have no business being it, unqualified, but they're pushing them through. And essentially, whether he says yes or no, it won't matter, because the decision's been made by Tim Pearson and Banks and Adams and all those people that, no, we're going to put my guy through. Those are my people. So that's what you have here.
Yeah. And the truth of the matter is, it's not like and this is no disrespect to anybody, but like, you're not working at a grocery store. Okay. It's not like, oh, you put the slow bagger on, at the place where they have to bag groceries. The real life consequences of these acts, especially when you're putting multiple people in. We all know there's, I worked in the government for 16 years. We all know that there's a plant here and there in bureaus, and they suck, and they get the easy cases, and they get the same salary as us hard workers, but whatever, we can't say anything about it. It's one person, we can minimize the damage. But when you have units that are having an influx of people who are not qualified, now that means that that's how the units are being run, on average. And you can't have that. That is really detrimental to regular people, to New Yorkers who are relying on the cops to be able to investigate and push forward criminal cases, for justice. And you're really letting the people down. So those are those cases.
So with McCormick, then we go to Veneziano, who was in internal affairs. Now I can tell you this: here's a little disclosure for people. In my charges and my stuff that happened in internal affairs, obviously Veneziano had to sign off on some of that paperwork. I still have it, actually. So he was in internal affairs for a few years, and then he ran into the Eric Adams wall, because Veneziano eventually is replaced by Iglesias, the guy I keep talking about. and he got sent to, I believe it was transit, correct? He went to they transferred him because he didn't see he said something he shouldn't have said technically, which is blow the whistle on corruption, even though he's part of internal affairs. And then they came after him, and then they anointed Iglesias, and they were partying at Con Sofrito. So what about his claims, Veneciano's claims? Because he was out the pasture, man.
Veneciano, for me, I relate most to him, obviously, as internal affairs, since I was in charge of internal affairs at DOC, and he was second in command over in PD. For me, this was something that I held close to my heart, because I understand what it's like to be public enemy number one or number two in a department where you have to, unfortunately, you have to be the bad guy. You have to be the one to investigate people and bring charges. And you try very hard to be equal and fair with it all, but no matter what, you're the enemy. And so for me, I was like, I get it. Like for his case, I was like, I get it. I get it because I was you. And I also get it because I represented my number two, my partner in internal affairs at DOC, Ruben Benitez. And I got him his position back when the same exact thing happened to him. Okay. It's the literal blueprint that they follow. What happens? You whistle blow as internal affairs. You're basically just doing your job. Unlike everybody else, it's literally your job to whistle blow when you are in internal affairs. It's your job to keep everybody honest. And what happens after that? You get sidelined. He couldn't get fired because of civil service protection. So what do? You embarrass the guy. You embarrass the guy that everybody loves to see embarrassed because it's internal affairs. So you strip him of his position in an elite unit like internal affairs. You put him in an inferior unit like transit. You put him in, on the sidelines physically, where he's not even in an office that's representative of his title. You purposely rubber room him, tell him there's no work to do here. There's no opportunity for advancement. You're just going to sit here like a bump on a log, and everybody gets to, pass you by and look at you and laugh about what happened. And that's what happened to Benitez also at DOC. They did the exact same thing to him. They couldn't fire him because of his civil service protection. He had, his lowest level title. He was an associate commissioner. He was right under me, right really next to me, because I treated him as my partner. And they demoted him 5 ranks to investigator, an entry-level position. They threw him into the applicant investigation unit, which is like the lowest level. They put him in a goddamn cubicle. Okay, a cubicle, right? This is like literally the oracle of DOC. He knows everything. And they just were like, yep, sorry. And in the end, I got him his position back. We got the back pay. We got him everything back. But for that lengthy period of time, they just wanted to embarrass him. They just wanted to make an example of what it happens to you when you whistle blow. And so when Veneciano told me what happened to him, I was like, this is the exact same thing that I just represented Benitez on, and that I personally observed for literally 3 years in this administration. So yeah, for Veneciano, his crime was that he was investigating people who were in Jeffrey Madry's orbit, right? In Madry's orbit, and he substantiated, charges for that person. And then, after that, the Brooklyn DA's office, I believe it was Brooklyn, they were interested in Madry himself. And although Veneciano was not the one conducting that investigation, the DA's office simply wanted, paperwork and internal information about what happened with Madry so that they could do their investigation and potentially pursue a case against Madry. And so what did Veneciano do? He cooperated like he's mandated to do. He liaised with the DA's office, and he did exactly what his job, required. And Madry finds this out. And, next thing you know, this is what they did. They rubber roomed him.
Yep. His is directly involved because he was the one that went over there, and whatever it is they asked, he was going to, it would have taken down Madry, but of course, everything's paused. So Madry, the corruption he saw, he was cooperating with, this is what's going on here. And this was in the earlier stages of what became later on the overtime scandal, which Madry is the head person with that, one of the heads anyway. And so seeing that is completely retaliatory, which is something we see over and over again with this administration. But the last guy you were representing here, who's probably, in my opinion, the most distinguished out of the group, and that's Chief Pontillo. Chief Pontillo, this year, there was an article written by Eric Umansky in ProPublica. He was blowing a whistle on what? These cowboys under John Schell and Kaz Daughtry ran around, weren't even turning on their body cameras. And in some instances, Kaz Daughtry didn't even have any on. There's no body camera on them. And they're running around. And when you're supposed to order people or they look for things, that is a big red flag, because he was in charge of that assessment unit where they would, they try to red flag things before it becomes an issue. So, and he was very good at that. Yet here he is saying, hey, you guys are running around doing this crazy stuff. There's no recourse to defend this. And for that, he gets destroyed. And I saw Caban in the middle of this because I read Pintos's name. And if anyone knows Chief Pintos, who represents Eddie Caban in that matter, he told Pontillo, well, if you don't like this, you're going to be demoted to captain. So, take this. Basically, they'd force him off the job. And Pintos, another guy who was swept up in that corruption probe, because we all know where he was hanging out as well. So that is the Pontillo case. And he's got I think his is the most concrete. And he's got John Schell and Caban dead to rights on how they spoke to him and how they handled him, just because he was stating a fact and trying to do his job, was saying, listen, the NYPD, there's going to be a lot of legal issues. These guys can't run around with no body cameras on and all. And they took it out on him.
That's exactly right. He's like an integrity arm of the division, of the whole NYPD. And also he's a preventative arm. It's exactly what you just said, whereas somebody like IAB, like myself, right? The thing happened already, and now I have to investigate and punish it. Just like cops, right? Like the crime happened, you got to investigate and punish it. But this is a person who really wanted to everybody wants to make PD better. I mean, if you're working there, you want to make it better, but it's his job to assess and notice the things that are about to go off the rails and that are going to become problems. It's a risk assessment job. And it's literally, again, his job to raise those red flags. He's not just a squeaky wheel. He's getting paid, for that position. That's what he's supposed to do. And, he saw things were happening with, like you said, the body worn cameras. People were acting fugazi with it. They were not turning it on when they were supposed to. They were covering things up. He brought it to Commissioner Sewell's attention, who actually, to her credit, was very concerned about it as well. She took it seriously. And he was also concerned about the car chases. Car chases were, happening way more than they should have. We are seeing the consequences of that. As you've reported about it. We've seen it in the papers. There's been an increase in the car chases. So he flagged that. Stuff like that. Stuff that have real life consequences to civilians who are just minding, maybe minding their own business, maybe not, but everybody is still due their constitutional rights and, safety in New York City. So it was his job to notice. It was his job to whistleblow. He did all of those things. And that's exactly what happened. This is what he was met with. An ultimatum, basically. Either shut up or, you're going to go down for this.
Another thing, too, is he also responds, as Ron Layson puts in the chat, he also had to respond to the Federal Monitor. He's responsible for that.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And and I sympathized with him on that too, because I also had a Federal Monitor to respond to. And again, when you have to respond to Federal Monitor, you have to respond to Federal Monitor. This is not a suggestion. It's a mandate. It's a law. It's actually a law where he'd have to talk to the Federal Monitor and make sure that they were well aware of what's going on. The transparency had to be paramount. And so for him to, again, you're putting somebody in a position where you're telling them, you have to do this. You have to, people want to call people rats. You have to be a rat. You have to. That's your job under the law. And now you're going to get punished for that very same thing. So it's a huge problem. And yeah, like I said in statements that I've made before, I'll say it again. I've said it to my clients. I am honored to represent these four people. Honored. When they came to me and retained me, I told them on day one, and I'll tell them again, I am honored to represent these people. I'm honored that they've, put their trust in me to speak on their behalves, and I'm going to get justice for them. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like I said, I think there's a ton of merit to these cases. And I think also with something we constantly discussed was these cases, first of all, you had to kind of bring them out now, I believe, because there's a statute of limitations with everything. And the fact that there's investigations going on. Like, I don't know if you've contacted Eric Sanders or Quatisha Epps, but she clearly could be a witness for Veneciano's claim that there was stuff going on with Madry in that office. I think even there's something with McCormick with that. So there's one right there, right?
We could liaise. Absolutely. We could liaise and we could talk through. And actually, I would encourage anybody who's watching who has specific information, who might be able to help, who might be a witness, who might be willing to, say something or even just tell me in the background. People who really, not rumors, but people who know for sure things were going on, who could corroborate. I'm obviously, please reach out.
Yeah. And I think this is important that you put it in a state court, because the federal court, not to hit them for anything, but we know right now that there's a pause in everything, which is why you had to do this now instead of where's all those other investigations going? Oh, everything's paused because it's Eric Adams and he's doing quid pro quos for Emo Bove and Trump, apparently. So we can't touch him or his people. But these lawsuits, the number one defendant, is it not Eric Adams? Wasn't not all for Eric Adams somehow, all of this stuff?
Yeah, because, Eric Adams is giving his tacit approval to all of it by placing these individuals in these positions and, knowing what's going on. Like I said, I blew the whistle on day one when I was fired about Molina, and it all spiraled and snowballed from there. You can't say that you're putting people into certain positions, high-ranking positions, heads of agencies, and not know what they're doing and not direct them to do exactly what they're doing. So all of these things were known. All of these things, even Commissioner Sewell, I don't know for sure, but, Discovery will help us figure this all out. But I know that she had meetings with Adams and his people. So if it comes out that there was information passed between her and Mayor Adams specifically, that is going to be even more corroborative evidence that he knew what was going on and didn't put a stop to it.
Yeah. And by the way, she's supposed to get deposed by yours truly, because for everyone that keeps saying she was a great police commissioner. Excuse me. She was with pictures with the one aforementioned mob associate and self-admitted criminal Jimmy Rodriguez. So what is that all about? So before we go rushing and throwing pom-poms for Sewell, let's scale this back and say, wait a minute, she was hanging around the same people. So, hey, but she was terminating people like myself, like Marlon Bethel. There's a and she also let Kaz Daughtry slide. Kaz Daughtry should have been terminated because he perjured himself and gave misleading statements on an official investigation, was signed off that he only lost 20 vacation days. And the person that signed that for some reason was Pintos. Very, very odd, because he's not anyone in the office or important in the grand scheme of things, but he signed off on that with his signature. And you can actually look this up. So again, and not to, it's like keep beating a dead horse here, and the horse is telling you these guys are all corrupt. They're all corrupt. It's not one person, or it's another. Special Hagen, she's in the. I wanted to say, she says Adams, Banks, Madry, Pearson, and Caban are trash. They want people to break the law and suffer the consequences, while they clearly have some kind of protection when they are unindicted co-conspirators. She's 100% right. And I wanted to ask you another question, because I saw that obviously Eric Adams is the top defendant, and then in each case is someone else. You have Phil Banks, who is the unindicted co-conspirator. You have John Schell, Mr. Newsmax himself, Mr. cheat on my taxes and kill people on the job, and there's no grand jury minutes anywhere for it, even though he says he was clear. There's no record of it anywhere. You have, of course, Eddie Caban, who's the ringleader of the nightclub extortion part. But I think there's one guy that you haven't added, and that would have been Tim Pearson. No, why is Tim? We know for a fact, running with you, Tim Pearson was clearly involved, and we learned this with all of John Scola's lawsuits. He's the man behind the door. Like, you can't see him, but he's clearly waiting behind the door. He was involved with corrections decisions. He was involved in affairs decisions in the NYPD. He was involved in promotions. Where is he in this? Because there's no way he has nothing to do with any of this. No, I refuse to believe it.
I hear you, Sal. What I try very hard to be as conservative as possible, and try to get very specific with respect to the lawsuits and who did what. As this thing moves forward, if we get to the discovery stage, which I highly anticipate and I'm excited to get to, we will be able to understand exactly what happened behind closed doors. Right now, we have only one side of the story because we only have what we know. We're going to discover more that's literally why it's called discovery. So time will tell, Sal. I think that there's going to be a lot that we'll be able to uncover during the discovery stages. I mean, we're entitled to a lot of information because we know a lot, but we also know that there's a lot more that we have yet to uncover, and we're entitled to know what actually happened here. And when we do, we'll see if more things kind of come to light.
I was wondering too, because if you're going to get discovery, especially since Caban and these guys I think now you should bring up the Consa Frito. I would bring up, they're hanging around the mob guy, that there's all kinds of stuff that I showed the human trafficking report that disappears. Oh, don't talk about this, right? So I think that's a major factor in, they can't make a decision because they'd have to terminate themselves and basically go down to 26 Federal Plaza and say, listen, I'm a criminal, just handcuff me. I'm guilty of all the, what's going on, because they're making these decisions. They're telling people like Pontillo, you need to leave this job, when it's Cabana should have left the job. Pontillo's not hanging out in the Bronx with them, hanging out in that place. So that's going to, you have a position here where you're going to personally be able to get discovery and then depose these people. I know the city's probably going to try to dismiss this case immediately, but you'll probably that's going to be a whole match with that. But there's going to be a point where you're going to be able to get these guys on the stand. And that's where this is where the rubber meets the road. Guys like Shell and Cabana, because I think they're hiding so much stuff, and we kind of know about it, but we people want accountability, especially the people in the chat, the people on the job. And I don't know if we'll ever see it, but I think you're going to come real close, because you have 4 people that were highly decorated and distinguished on this job and reached the highest levels that are clearly being treated just like everyone else because they're not part of the Crumbs crew or the Consa Frito crew, so they had to get axed. I mean, that's how I see it.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And you're right. When I do have the opportunity to depose people, I am going to depose them thoroughly and fully. And they should know that.
I know. Hey, someone just mentioned the Crowlow cars. Samara Cohen said the Crowlow cars. That's a whole nother thing that they were doing. John Shell, these guys were allowing people to take out these Crowlow cars, which is a program that this is not what's designed to do. The take-home cars for executives, and they were taking the Crowlow cars and giving them to their friends and cronies.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that was a whole nother thing.
You know how many investigations I had to do in DOC with that shit, Sal? This literally will not leave my brain. It's living rent-free in my head. I cannot escape the damn cars. I can't escape the cars. The misuse of vehicles has been the bane of my existence for years. So here we are.
Nighthawk says there's no accountability in NYPD, just vindictive acts of vengeance on other MOS. And that's another thing I was going to tell you. I'm going to point out to you. Your case would automatically have that Manel claim. And I'll tell you why. Look at all the cases in front of you, some that you have. Personally, you have other cases against them where there's a pattern, and the pattern is the same thing. They're very vindictive. They seek retribution. They look to smear you. They look to destroy you. And it's over and over again in each case. If none of this has any merit, Why would they be doing that? Why are they calling
Yeah.
New York Post to have people write hit pieces for them and try to paint people as something they aren't? Why do they
I
keep
agree.
doing it? Because
I agree.
you know what your thing, it was like a bomb that dropped. They had to hear it from everyone. The New York Times, the New York Post, the Daily News, all the major media covered that. They hate that. And they're like, we have an issue. But yet that right there shows that they have an issue. It's a pattern, and the pattern is the same. It's all the same. They seek retribution. They seek vengeance. They come after you. They destroy your name. They also, the other things they do, they want you never to get a job again. In my opinion, I think what they want is they essentially want you to like just blow your brains out, shoot yourself, and that's the end of you. So this like, oh, this is another life we've extinguished, and it's like a little notch on your belt, because that's what this feels like. Because there's no way there's a pattern amongst every case I see, everything I hear. It doesn't matter whether it's your case, John Scola's case, Eric Sanders' case. It's always the same thing. I'm seeing the same thing over and over again with these people, and there's no accountability. But we're supposed to accept that Eric Adams is the savior of New York City, yet he's got the highest unfavorability. The corruption is so much. I mean, the guy should really just turn himself in at this point and say, you know what? I know you. He's guilty. The guy is a straight up criminal. Him and his crew. Eric Adams and Pearson and Banks remind me of 70s Harlem's gangsters. That's what they are. They want to be these 70 gangsters. The 1970 era in Harlem, the Frank Lucas, that's what they want to be, which is why they were speaking highly of the Supreme Team. That was Pearson and Eric Adams talking about that. And Banks, he's part of that crew, so they all think it's 1970s. And as they would write on the bottom of those emails, it's our time. That's Kaz Dawdry said that a lot. It's our time. I want to know what our time means. Define what that means.
What does that mean?
I think we understand what that means. It's our time. And it's this crew, this little crew with John Shell and his 4 necks just holding their bag around, apparently. But this is your suits are bombshell. And I don't know what's next with this. When's your next hearing on this stuff alone? I'm sure they're going to move to try to dismiss this stuff.
That's what, I expect that they'll try to make a motion to dismiss, and we'll have to fight that, and we'll take it from there. But once we win that motion, we're going to pursue everything that we can. This is the type of situation where I should mention the Chiefs. I mean, nobody was actually in it for litigation reason at the outset. Nobody wants a money grab. Nobody wanted to blow this up. To be honest with you, you're the only podcast I did. I didn't do anything. I filed this thing. Next thing I know, I'm getting 800 phone calls from the press. Like in certain situations where I feel I have something important to say, I'll contact press. I'll do a TikTok. I'll be proactive. In this situation, I said nothing. My clients said nothing. None of us we were just like, okay, this is what we have to do. I filed it quietly. I said not a damn thing, nothing. And then, people, obviously when it hits the docket, people get wind of it and then they call, and it just spiraled. But, and I'm not going to ignore the calls, but I didn't pursue it. I was not active about it. So this isn't that. It's so strange to me. It's not strange that it's interesting to people, because it should be. But, this was not a situation where the Chiefs were like, let's make this happen. Like, let's embarrass people. Let's whatever. Not at all. Not at all. This was just about making them whole again. That's all we want.
Listen, they had to work under a corrupt administration. And I know some people say, well, they should have said something, but they did say something, actually. That's why we're here.
We're here.
They did say something, and that's when they came after him. And you have to understand, when you're in this high-ranking position, it's a little different. And you're not going to kind of like, I guess if you don't know something or whatever, you hear about things. It really depends if something lands on your lap. When it comes to these guys, they're so corrupt. And the way they do things, what other recourse do you have? Rob Lukash said, having seen many chiefs being told to leave and sue, these 4 cases, in my opinion, have the greatest amount of true merit. I agree. And Special Agent says a commission needs to be ordered. This is worse than the events that led to the napkin commission. Again, these guys are protected. Not even the so-called politicians are standing on business. It's true. They're not.
She's right.
And that is the issue with this, is that you don't see any politician saying anything, right? They just keep their mouth. Eric Adams is the savior. So all I keep hearing about. That's all I keep hearing about is Eric Adams is the savior. It's a big mantra, but the polls don't show that. Neither does the reaction. And by the numbers and the math, Eric Adams can't win. You know how he wins, Sarena? Everyone else steps out of the race, which is what he's saying. Cuomo needs to leave. Schlewer needs to leave. Amdani needs to leave. What? So you could be anointed because you can't win a primary? Nobody likes you. Nobody wants you. His approval rating in the African-American community, Sarena, is at 16%. That's the vote he'll get if he was to.
Yeah.
The election was today. 16% of African-Americans are voting for him. He's lost his own base. Where is he going?
Yeah, I agree. The only way he wins the race is if he's the only one in it.
That's how I see it. Ron Layson said, agreed, Rob. There is a difference between we are going in a different direction and being removed from doing their job, that's what's going on here. Ron is right. Rob is right. There were 2 executives. They're telling you it's a difference between telling them we want you to leave because we're going a different direction, or what? Yep. Saying what about us? What'd you say? And then you're seeing that's what happened here. So as much as people want to say things that happened in the past, and I get it, because I know John, by the way, John McCarty was the first to put this out publicly, and then everybody else came after. But John and Eric on Finance Unfiltered said they felt it was a little hypocritical with some things because of the stuff they've done in their career. Again, I could see that angle, but I'm looking at it where there's still merits to this case. I don't really care about what they did. I'm looking at the facts of what this is, because 2 things can be right at the same time. People like to tell you, Sarena, Sal Greco has an axe to grind. At the same time, what he says is all true. So
I've been there, Sal. You and I are in the same situation. I know. Sour grapes. All right, but they're sour grapes maybe, but also always right.
Exactly. That's the whole point. I see someone here, class 8311 said, came in late, allegations are criminal. Did her clients ever approach the feds or U.S. attorney's office, or vice versa?
Oh, well, I'm not going to get into details about that, but it'll all come out in the end.
We know that Veneciano did, for sure, because he has
Yep. And listen, it's everything as this thing moves on. As I said before, nobody in my crew, none of my clients, including and myself, wanted to make this an entire public spectacle, but it's now become one. And people are going to want to know the updates. They're going to be following the case. They're going to want to know what's going on. And it's a court of public opinion, and people are interested, and they're going to see what happens as this thing moves along. They're just going to see it. So
David Preston says, what's up, Sal? I say, what's up, David? What's going on? And Patrick Donahue says the NYPD claims that it wants MOS to report corruption until a MOS reports corruption. He's right. Yeah. And that's the whole point here. These 4 chiefs were reporting corruption, and they were actually, what happened to them is stuff that we've been saying all along. If anything, this verifies everything that we were saying here on the Sal Greco Show, that we said on the Finest Unfiltered, that me and John put out with Eric and Marlon and Rob and Ron. We don't do this because we're not making money on clicks, right? We're not. I know somebody out there, some deranged person lately has been saying, "Oh, clicks." There's no clicks here. You're not making. I'm not even monetized on X, by the way. So there's no making money for this thing. We're not saying anything sensational. We're giving you facts based on evidence. And the evidence is coming from the people that are 1, victims, 2, in the know, or 3 could be potential witnesses, or just they know things, because this is a law enforcement based agency, remember? And they have no avenue to go, folks. You know why? because when or if you do with these 4 chiefs, remember they're the highest ranking chiefs, right? 3-star chiefs. When they stand up and say, I don't like this, something is wrong, look at what happens to them. So do you think a regular cop wants to go to internal affairs, and say, oh, well, this is going on? Look what happened to these 4 people. They went as far as we have people that we know on federal investigations right now. Why are those investigations paused? There is no recourse for people. And the best way to do things sometimes is through the courts. Because you can say whatever you want. Once that's on it, we've seen that with Jeffrey Epstein right now. Everything that's in the court is all that matters. And that's what's going to sway the police department, whether they change for the better or the worse or whatever they do in the future. Just going at it in the media or whatever, it's not going to work. It has to be some kind of decision levied in a court case. And that's when you see things moving. And that's the only recourse they have, because technically these 4 chiefs are left with this is all they could do, because they've did everything else and there's no answers. There's nothing for them. It's just, oh, well, this happens every day apparently in the NYPD, so we don't care. And Ron Layson here said, I always said that if you accept the 3-star position, you're basically signing on for the remainder of the administration. A 2- and 3-star position is considered a city executive. That's great. Ron and Rob have been on the target. Rob says, where is Marlon? Perception management. Yeah, that's true. This is all perception management. Patrick Donahue, as Scola and Sanders have said and profited from in the past, the NYPD and city will settle rather than participate in discovery or admit wrongdoing. This case, folks, there's a lot of merit to this. I know people have personal feelings. Like I said, I don't want people's feelings to be get your feelings involved, take your emotions out of this. There's a lot of merit to this case. You just heard what Sarena said, and me and John and Eric and Marlon and Rob and Ron, we've constantly pointed out to lawsuits and facts and evidence. And the evidence here is, in my opinion, is overwhelming. Not only do they have a merit for these cases, this effectively ends Eric Adams' career. He's the main defendant here. People keep overlooking that because a mayor being involved in the police department so much was a red flag to begin with. And then you have today, when we literally this morning caught wind of these 37 probationary police officers who have been working. Some have been working in the street, making arrests. They're now trying to say, well, you have psychological issues years later, and we got to terminate you and sign this paperwork. I don't get it, I don't know if Sarena could come back on. I think I lost her there because I wanted to ask her one last thing, and it was I don't even know if it was about the case, but you pretty much you got what you needed to hear out of this. And if there's we'll say anything in the future in regards to that case, I'm sure I'm going to have her back on to discuss if they try to dismiss this. I'm well aware they're going to try to do something in this case, dismiss it. They're going to cry. I know they're going to do something. All right, Serena's back. Let's put Sarena back on. I wanted to get her.
I'm so sorry. I did pretty good on the run. You didn't have any glitches.
So I think we covered all the bases with that.
Yeah.
I know people, again, I don't want people to look at this with their feelings. You have to do things based on the facts and the evidence and the merits of this case. I think you're rock solid. I can't wait to see this play out because I'm sure discovery and depositions are going to be great. I want to see how the city really handles this because the mayor himself will be getting deposed. Just so people know that the mayor will get deposed. So the mayor has a discovery himself. And since he has 7 cell phones,
I want the passwords.
Okay, we would love to know what was going on those cell phones. So, in closing with this, we've touched up on Email Bove, how that case went down. And this is all coming around now in full circle. And why? We were the ones that kept talking about how it's unethical with Email Bove, who had one of the worst confirmation hearings I've ever seen. He's got to get through the committee. That was terrible. He had no answers to anything, and he made Democrat senators look like heroes when they're some of the most vile human beings on earth, yet they made sense because he's that bad. So you had that, and then people forget about this, and it's full circle. Mr. P. Diddy, who's Mr. Eric Adams' close friend, who he even met, he tweeted about him not too recently after this whole thing with the case. And P. Diddy's case was affected by Eric Adams. And you know why? The original prosecutor of that case was not Comey's daughter. It was one of the prosecutors on the Eric Adams case who resigned because they asked them to do something that was not only unethical, it should be criminal. They're going to get around that. It should be criminal what they did. But they asked them to do something unethical and they had the integrity to leave. So that affected P. Diddy's case because then you got Comey. So the direction of the case changed. Nobody's actually saying this, but it's a fact. So Bove and Eric Adams and that whole thing leads to this moment. So I don't know if you have anything to say about all of that, because all of this is all because of the worst decision that President Trump has made since he got back to office, and that's getting in the middle of Eric Adams' case.
I totally agree. I do wonder if Trump really thought it through and really appreciated and understood what was going to happen when he made that decision, because it doesn't feel like he did, or his advisors gave him, the full picture, because, you're seeing it, I'm seeing it, we're all seeing it. Like, Eric Adams is not who Trump thinks Eric Adams is. I think. I think Trump thinks Eric Adams is a different person than we all know him to be, and that he saved the person that he thought he was. But Eric Adams nobody likes him. As you said, his rate is so down. His ratings are so down from everybody. And he doesn't have, it's not like he's divisive. Like, it's not like some people love him, some people hate him. Nobody likes the guy because he has screwed everybody. Like, he's messed up all different walks of life, people. Like, that's the problem with Eric Adams, is that he has been a problem to everyone. You would think Eric Adams would be loved by PD, but look what he's done with PD. So, even the people that you think would align with him are not. So I agree with you. The thread continues. This whole thing is all connected, and, we're going to have to see what happens, but it's all very, very upsetting, and the corruption is rampant.
The corruption is so rampant. You could do this for hours because it's so bad. This guy, he is the one guy that, like, it just, no, wait. Oh no, it is a new one. Wait, what? Oh, what happened 5 minutes ago? And then I can't believe the drumbeat that it's not organic, folks, that Eric Adams is the savior. Yet they were screaming this, and then he gets walloped in the same week between the 4 lawsuits you dropped, and now 37 probationary police officers that are being told to resign, or else when they don't have to resign. It's all a pressure campaign for perception management purposes by this maniac, Jessica Tisch, who thinks she's the next heir apparent to being mayor. That's what she thinks. How do you, this guy every day? Oh yeah, and by the way, there's an Uzbeki government agent that allegedly doing straw donations into his campaign. Still, so why are we saying this guy is a savior? And it's the same people involved in Trump's circle. And I'm telling you, there's something there. There was a casino bid that he got involved in in the Bronx, so that Bally's, which is affiliated with Trump, to get in there. There's the fact that they want the Trump organization name back on Woolman Rink, but they have a felony conviction that can't happen because going through all the process parts, the Trump organization will be last people the city could have in front of them asking them questions. Yeah, mayor. Here it is. The mayor helps Bally's clear key council vote for casino bid. This was a couple last month. The city council passed a resolution Wednesday that will let Albany alienate Bronx Parkland. The gaming operator needs to have a chance of winning a coveted new license, and that would come with a 9-figure payoff for the Trump organization. That's what it's all about, folks. You have to, as much as you want to love someone, as much as you're saying they're doing great for the country, you can't sit there and say, I'm okay with this. It screams of quid pro quo. And you would all be up in arms if this was Joe Biden doing it with someone in California. But it's Trump doing it with Eric Adams, and don't talk about that. Don't say that. Oh, he's MAGA. MAGA is like falling apart, where you have two parts of this now. There's the original people, someone like myself that was there in the very beginning. I literally was at Trump Tower trying to work for the campaign. And by then I found out you can't as a cop, so I had to back out of it. But I was trying to be a volunteer. And then you have this new part that came out in the last year or two that is basically belittling the other. So it's been co-opted by other people. But the one thing I know for sure is you have all these influence people that have made a lot of money, one being a deputy director of the FBI right now, and they peddled all this stuff about Jeffrey Epstein, and now you don't release anything, and there's nothing to see. But for years, the now podcaster turned FBI assistant director there, for years he made money off of telling people, I spoke to this source, I spoke to that source. And then he gets to the FBI, and he's a credentialed. The guy was in the NYPD. Nobody even knows what he did in the NYPD. He's not like someone like me or John or Eric. I don't know what this guy did, but they basically have kind of molded this character of this guy, saying he's something he's not. And now you're seeing, and Pam Bondi, who, 1 minute she says, I'm going to release the files are on my desk. The next minute there's nothing to talk about. Oh, I misspoke. You misspoke 3 months ago. You've been on TV constantly peddling this stuff. And that's where you fractured everything, because now they're saying you're just as transparent as Eric Adams is. That's what you're seeing.
It is. It's terrible. It's horrible. Sal, I unfortunately have to run back into court, and so I'm going to let you continue this conversation. Yeah. I want to thank you so much for having me on. As always, I love hanging out with you. I really appreciate your time, your viewers' time. Thank you. And I wish I didn't have to go back in there, but I do.
Well, it's very important. I just figured we tie it up all together because we've been on this forever. And there's a connection here, and it all starts with Email Bove and Trump getting involved, which affected the Diddy case. I don't know if you could say one thing about that. You saw he was found guilty of 2 out of the 5 charges, and we're all wondering what was that?
We got to get another show on that one, but that was the jury basically saying that they did not believe that any of his acts were coerced, and that's a big message to give to the prosecution. But we could talk forever on that one. We'll have to come back on that.
Yeah. Well, listen, thanks for coming on. Thanks for coming on, especially doing it from the car, because you're at court. It's an honor to have you on. Just one time, where can people reach out to you, especially any of these 37 PPOs, if they want to contact you?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, if you need me, I could be found on all social media, but go to my website, www.townsendlawnyc.com. You could email me through there. You could contact me through there. And you can also find me on Instagram. You can find me on X, Townsend Sarena. On Instagram, I'm Sarena Tee. I'm on TikTok. I'm everywhere. So just Google me and you'll find me. Thank you so much, Sal.
Thank you. It's always an honor and a pleasure to have you on, Sarena, and we'll have you back on soon. There you have it, folks. A lot of bombshell stuff, but if you connect all the dots, you start to really scratch your head and say, what is really going on with all of this? This guy is a mess in New York City. It's far worse than people even think, but there are people that say this guy's the savior. So I want one comment here by Special Hagen again, said, even more than his so-called dyslexia, Adams's vanity, insecurities, and vindictiveness are his undoing. He should be more focused on running the city than hooking up his homies and vendettas. Yeah. That Special Agent has it right there. It's unbelievable that this has been going on, and what we heard today is like groundbreaking stuff. So before I head out, let's have producer Jack, the producer's take here. I don't know what you thought about all of that. That stuff.
So Yeah, I actually probably have the biggest revelation of the entire day, believe it or not. So a lot of you probably know that are watching the show. I like to do some digging and background research as things are going on, just to get an idea of supplemental pieces of content that we could add to the screen for all of your viewing pleasure. And as I'm doing so, the NYPD, which has a knack for leaving a paper trail for just about everything, I come to realize Edward Caban, one of the people named in the lawsuit for selling promotions allegedly for $15,000 in the NYPD's Instagram account. About a year ago today, there was a post. Congratulations to Detective Ingrid Sanders, Office of the Chief of Department, on her well-deserved promotion to detective first grade. So we all recognize Ingrid Sanders as the woman who's making about $350,000 as a chauffeur. So doing some additional research, I decided to look into Luis Roldan, or Officer Roldan from the Community Affairs Bureau. He was the person who took this photo. And lo and behold, I come to find out that he made $243,000 last fiscal year and more than doubled his salary in overtime. Now, we've all talked about this problem at length within the NYPD, right? Like the overtime issue, the number of employees that made more than $100,000 just in overtime. But to have someone working in the Community Affairs Bureau, taking photos at ceremonies, making $243,000 a year in an era where salaries in the public sector, or private sector rather, have gone down. Like, that just kind of rubs me a little bit in a weird way. Like, I get that not every law enforcement officer is going to be making arrests out on the street or whatever in the Bronx projects, but $240,000 a year to be taking photos, $350,000 a year for 3 straight years for John Brennan to pretty much be John Shell's driver. He was actually making more than Shell as his chauffeur, which is absolutely insane.
I know.
I've compared all these guys to Morgan Freeman in Driving Miss Daisy, because that's the type of job they have, the cushy assignment where even though they're of a lower rank, they've gotten hooked up to get exuberant amounts of overtime. What do people in the comments think about this hoopla nonsense? Because I think it's absolutely ridiculous.
I say Marlon had the best comment so far. He said, that's a lot of photographs.
$243,000 a year to take photographs. Like, how many photographers that are at weddings and like in high level positions are getting paid that much money? I don't know. Like, I don't even think Mar-a-Lago photographers make $240,000 a year. Like, that's a pretty good hookup.
Listen, these guys have just, I don't know. Madry said, Madry allowed for that to happen. It was all under Madry's watch. He's the guy who let this all go on. The cop can't sign his own overtime. The lieutenant, it's him. It has to be authorized, and that's the issue. And it's him, Caban. You had Wendy Garcia. Yeah, all these people in the middle of this, and yet we still don't have any accountability. I mentioned one guy, Saraceno, as the fall guy, basically. He's one of, like, there's a few other stumbling blocks to get there. Yeah, Chief Fedorov. Yeah, and Madry's still the one giving the orders. Yet, don't talk about this. We handled this. He retired. It's over. That's what the soccer mom Tish is but yet, everywhere you look, there's another scandal with this woman and underneath her. Nighthawk says a lot of people getting bread with the NYPD scam. It's true.
Yeah, and KB conveniently pointed out that the NYPD has civilian photographers. So do the civilians photograph everyone who's not important, and then the people getting insane amounts of overtime, they photograph Madry's friends because they're a little bit better at photography? I'm also curious what other revelations.
Rob Lucas says maybe he has to buy his own cameras.
Perhaps. But what I was getting at, I mean, I think other agencies where there's this pay for play scheme, if you want to call it that, are going to start to get exposed. I mean, we've been hearing about rumblings about this happening within the Department of Sanitation, where people have to buy spots on the list when they're taking the physical exam. Of course, those are only allegations at this point in time, but we've been hearing about this in other agencies as well. And I'm of the belief that when there's smoke, there's fire. And as such, there has to be more of this going on. It's not just the NYPD.
Oh, yeah. Joel Ramirez said, he's funny. He says, Sal, Jack, want a pay increase? Yeah, go take some pictures. Pat Donahue says, let's be honest. Chauffeurs and door openers at 1PP borough offices were getting discretionary promotional purposes for decades.
Yes, and I'm happy he pointed that out, because this is not anything new. Like we all know about like Jimmy O'Neill's buddies or like his friends' kids who right out of the academy were put in the commissioner's office and then given a detective shield after a year. So this sadly is not a new concept, but you have to crunch down on the overtime, because it's good. Like, you have no cops in the subway where you need them because you're out of money for the budget, yet you have cops in uniform taking photos, getting paid about $250,000 a year. And for anyone complaining about the job right now, like, it has its problems. There's a lot of nasty stuff going on, but at the end of the day, like, it's still pretty good paying. You still get a pension. Like, it's not that bad of an arrangement, comparatively speaking. So I just wanted to point that out and give my 2 cents as well.
KB said something important here. He said, in the Ray Kelly days, the PC actually vetted the grade spots. Some got through, but he made working detectives a priority. I'm going to tell you something right now that you probably don't know. And I caught wind of this in the last 24 hours. It's not a rumor, okay? So former police commissioner Bill Bratton is seen quite often at One Police Plaza. Quite often. I think you know why. Because it is Bratton who is in Jessica Tish's ear. Because remember, she's a soccer mom, does not know the NYPD culture, and whatever it is that they're doing together. Remember, she was working underneath him when he first came back. That's how she was in whatever it is, she was a deputy commissioner of communications or something, or the electronics. She was the one that came up with that phone. So I've been telling everyone here that some of the Ray Kelly cronies and Bill Bratton cronies and Bill Bratton himself is intricately involved in Jessica Tish's ear. And there it is. He's seen at 1PP quite often. I don't know why a former police commissioner would be coming in as frequently as he does. But now you're learning as we go along with this that there's so much more layers to all of this. And it's just like trying to peel back an onion. And, you know, Eric and John say it like, we have enough that we could probably go on for years with this stuff. I think he's right. I think there's even more stuff that we don't even know about. Joel Ramirez says, Jack, the optics don't look good. You're 100% right. Cops are making over $200,000 and are not visible on the subway system. He's right.
Cops, not the chief of department, not a lieutenant, not a sergeant, not a captain. Police officers. The chief of department, if I'm not mistaken, makes about $240,000 a year in a flat salary, assuming that they're working about 80 hours every single week, give or take a couple hours on either end. But you have police officers who are effectively making the same amount of money. And what does that say about rank? I know it's a paramilitary organization and there's like a very definitive hierarchy structure, but when you have people from much lower ranks who prefer to stay lower on the totem pole because they have a good arrangement where they can get lots of overtime, I think that kind of invalidates the system at play as well, where there's this large hierarchy. Because if you have a driver who's a lieutenant like John Brennan making $350,000 a year, you have a two-star chief making about $220,000 a year, roughly $130,000 less. Like, that kind of undermines the credibility of the system in place as well.
Well, you also got to remember with Epps' case, where they made her out to be the top earner, which is not the real number, but some of that money, Madry was telling her, you got to give me my crumbs, meaning he wanted some of the money and she had to deliver it to his wife. So there's a lot more to that people even realize, saying, wait a minute, you're telling someone, you're giving people overtime and telling them, give me my cut, give me my cash in envelopes or else, because, you know, this guy could destroy your life. So it's like, this is really something. You look at that. I mean, I'm starting to think now that we can't play it, but I wanted to play the song Photographs by Def Leppard. You take pictures, you can make $200,000 a year to take pictures and don't even do any real police work because you're just taking pictures. Kevin Manian says, my old partner used to say, everyone wants to be a detective, but no one wants to detect. He's right. That was an old saying, by the way. Pat Donahue, the NYPD is no longer a paramilitary entity. It lost that focus when it went woke. True, Michael Freed, unless you're Kaz, who still gets paid for OT. Samara Cohen, how is a new mayor supposed to clean this up? KB, Kaz, a first grader who never typed a DD5. That's
no,
right.
he's still Kaz Daughtry, by the way. I'm pulling this up right now. He's still on 50A, is listed as a first grade detective as of March 2025. So
Yeah.
as of a few months ago, he's still technically speaking is a first grade detective. I don't know how that would work out because he transitioned into a deputy mayor role and it's not saying that on 50A. I'd be curious to see what he's listed as in the system, because we all know that once Eric Adams, assuming he loses the election, is forced out of office, Kaz Daughtry is not going to have a job. Like that's a foregone conclusion at this point. He's not going back to the NYPD. They're not keeping him as deputy mayor. So like, what's going to happen to Kaz? Is he going to vest out with a pension? Is he still a detective? Is he a detective designated as deputy mayor? Because apparently the NYPD can bend the rules and do things like that. Now, like, I mean, like, where are we? No, like, he's in the system. He might be listed as NYPD detective designated as NYC deputy mayor. Like, there's one special designation just for him that was created.
So yeah, so and Marlon said he claims he's retired now. Pat Donahue says, can Kaz spell DD5? No, I don't think he can.
No.
And Nighthawk said this, that's his official uniform title. So this is what happened with that. He's on MELD desk, the military extended leave desk, until his time in NYPD has been paused while he's deputy mayor. So he's not in his 20th year. So the second that clock hits January 1st and he's no longer deputy mayor, then he goes back to being a first grade detective in the NYPD. And at that point, I'd say he'd probably have to make that decision. If he sticks around, he's going to get destroyed by quite a few.
What's your take on that, Sal? Do you think he stays around? I mean, because if he goes back to being a detective, he can get put anywhere, right? Like he can go to the 7-5. You can stick him in Queens. Like he's no longer protected under Jeffrey Madry and Eric Adams the way he was before. So like he's going to get bullied a lot if he has to go back to being a detective in some small precinct somewhere.
Yeah, it will never happen. Joel Ramirez says Kaz will be at 20 years in January.
Okay, so yeah, he's probably going to end up retiring. And one more update before I head out the door for today. So the Mets played a doubleheader this afternoon with the first game taking place during our show, and I had it on in the background. I'm sad to report that David Peterson, King David, as we're now going to be calling him on this show, because he has outstanding outings anytime he pitches during the day when we're hosting a show. He went 6 innings, 5 strikeouts, no runs. The Mets take a 1-0 lead into the bottom of the 8th inning. Peterson allows a runner on base. Ryan Stanek comes on and gives up a 2-run home run to Gunnar Henderson. The Mets go on to lose 3-1. How about that for an update?
Unbelievable. The Mets losing too many games to all these little teams. But there you have it. There's Jack's on the producer's take. So, folks, this was quite a riveting show. You learned a lot. You heard a lot. There's a lot of corruption in NYPD. Listen to me. The soccer mom, Tish, she doesn't belong there. All this talk is all fabricated, shoving it down your throat. It's all perception management, low information, talking points. This is the truth. We unveil the truth here. We do it through evidence, documents, lawsuits, you name it. That's what we do here in the Finance Unfiltered. So, there's probably going to be more on this. This is not going to go away. I'm sure we'll have Sarena back on in the future. Definitely want to talk to her about the P. Diddy stuff, because that verdict was, I thought we're going to see something else, but we'll get into that another date. But listen, thanks everyone for tuning in. Of course, if you can, tomorrow, 8:05 live, the Finest Unfiltered. You're definitely going to see John and Eric and Marlon, and they'll probably have someone else. And I'm sure they're going to be discussing this fiasco in the last 24 hours with the 37 probationary police officers. And if you are one of those people, please get a lawyer. Do not sign those papers to resign. Do not do that. Don't be bullied and browbeaten by these animals, because that's all they do. Because it's just one club and you're not in it. All right. So check out the Finest Unfiltered, 8:05 in the morning. Also, check out the 10-4 Tavern. They're on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. They just had their show. You could watch that on a replay. Also, Executive Perspective, as you know, every Wednesday. It's on at 5:05, 17:05 with Ron and Rob. And you could check that out on replay because yesterday Eric was on with Ron. That was a pretty good show. I actually watched the whole thing. It was they did give a good take on the July 4th incident with Jessica Tisch. So you should go back and watch it if you can. But thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for the comments. One last thing here. I see someone here said, Seth Lowe, Sal, do you think Curtis Sleeper will settle these NYPD misconduct cases? I actually think he absolutely would, because the law department will want to get rid of anything related to Eric Adams because it's going to cost millions. First of all, it costs millions to litigate things. The longer you fight, the more it's worth. It's just cheaper to just pay someone out, especially when you're guilty, when you know what Eric Adams has done. It's like the FBI has been floating around and actually had indicted him. So we know that it's wrong. And what are we doing? But Eric Adams, as long as he's in charge, they won't settle anything. That's how I see it. So unless he is removed or steps down or is arrested again, which should have happened already, they're not going to settle anything yet. But definitely Curtis Sleeper would settle those cases. I don't know this personally, but I know that any mayor would not want the bags left behind by the most incompetent and corrupt individual to ever be the mayor, and that is one Eric Leroy Adams. So with that, thank you all for tuning in. I hope you all have a great weekend. Enjoy the weather. It's summer. Don't do anything too crazy. If you are one of those 37 PPOs in NYPD, do not sign those papers. Just trust me on this. Get a lawyer. Get a lawyer and fight for your rights. Do not capitulate. Because these guys have a history of wanting you to capitulate. And that's why they don't like this show along with this network, because we're actually fighting for you guys out there, whether you want to believe that or not. So until Tuesday, when I'll be back on at 1:05, I hope everyone has a great weekend and enjoy the rest of your day. And with that being said, I'm going to be signing off from South Florida. And then you're going to hear the greatest words ever uttered by the illustrious mayor of New York City to close this out. So I'm signing off from South Florida, which is a sunny place for shady people.
So this is a biblical moment. You know, when Jesus was on the cross, he said, God, forgive them, for they know not what they do. All these Negroes who are asking me to step down, God, forgive them. Are you stupid?